It's your life coach and your realtor, Leslie Nguyen. I want to do a quick segment today on listening to and loving our youth. Okay? So, youth, it can be a child, maybe it's a teenager, maybe it's a teenager, maybe it's a young adult that we're talking about, right? I want for us to begin to understand the language of our young people, of the young people who are important to us, even the ones who we don't know, because they are still important. I want for us to start to see beyond the things that we don't understand and really listen with our hearts as well as with our ears. Okay? So there was a reel that I did maybe last week. I'm not sure if it was last week, but it was talking about how to hear a cry, even if it's a whisper. And this is so important because a lot of people tend to think that young people, they have nothing to complain about, when in fact, they go through so much, and in many ways, they go through so much more than I feel like I did when I was their age, or like maybe my older relatives did when they were young, because things have changed so much. And social media, while it has its uses and its benefits, also brings with it a burden to measure up for these young people, because anything can be recorded. Their lowest moments have been recorded, and so for some of these people, embarrassing moments have been recorded. Things that maybe they did in ignorance, they may have recorded themselves, and now they regret. Besides social media, if we just look at the world, the state of the world, even in this country, there is unrest. There's a lot of unrest, and this impacts them. This definitely impacts them. We see, where some people are concerned for the well-being of youth because of the things that are going on. And let me digress first on that topic and say that if you believe in Jesus Christ, you have the authority to cover these young people, just like you have the authority to cover yourself. And I encourage you to speak the word of God, to speak Psalm 91 over the young people, and to cover them with God's blood and with your prayers, because it works. And I encourage you to do this every day and through the day, no matter what you see or what you hear, to declare life and to speak life into them. So back to what I was talking about. With all of what they face, it's really important that we are able to communicate with them. The Bible talks about, fathers and mothers being reconciled with their children. And it's so important. And let's think about why. Let's think of just practically why this is so important. Because the family is the building block. And we need to have healthy children and healthy parents so that they can have healthy relationships. Everything is built on relationships. And ultimately it comes to the strength of their community, right? And the strength of the nation and the strength of the world, right? So when I talk about the strength of, I'm not talking about necessarily physical strength. I'm talking about our ability to thrive emotionally, spiritually, and health-wise. Okay, those are all strengths. And these are things that the enemy came to take. He came to destroy us, to rob us of these things. So let's start with learning how to communicate with young people. I think sometimes adults forget what it was like to be a teenager, or what it was like to be a kid. And that's dangerous, and I'll tell you why it's dangerous. If we forget our small beginnings, if we forget what it was like to be young, to be overlooked, to be misjudged, to be, treated as though we didn't matter, then we are more likely to cause others to feel that way unknowingly, even if it wasn't our intention. We have to be so intentional about how we communicate with the youth. And we have to think about this. We have to remember what it felt like to be young and what it felt like when we were looked down on, whether it was because we made a poor decision or we made a mistake, or maybe because of our ignorance, or just because of the fact that we were young. People assumed certain things, and we have to really be intentional about not doing that, not repeating that in the lives of young people. So let's talk about how a lot of young people feel right now. Okay, a lot of young people feel isolated. They feel abandoned and ignored. A lot of young people feel a lot of anger because of these things, but it's rooted in pain. A lot of young people feel confused because there's so much going on and they don't know where their place is in this world, and they don't know who's for them and who's against them. And all of these things going on within their hearts and in their minds, it calls for adults who are able to identify with them as people, as human beings, and realize that, you know what, in many ways, I went through that in some area of my life and at some stage of my life. And they need adults who have the compassion and the ability to communicate that compassion without being condescending. Because they are young, but they are not, it doesn't mean that they aren't aware. It doesn't mean that they aren't capable of rising above. So there's no need to be condescending, or to treat them like, oh, you poor thing. That's not what they need. They need you to reach out with a healing hand. And we offer healing by offering compassion with knowledge. Okay, we have to be able to give them knowledge in a compassionate way. And compassion is rooted in love. And if we love someone, we will be careful to choose the right words to deliver to them. We will be careful not to judge them or say things that will make them feel unworthy of our attention, that would make them to feel like they've done the worst thing and they couldn't be forgiven. We will give them the words of life, the words that will build them up instead of making them have a lower self-esteem. We will avoid doing what the Bible talks about when it talks about breaking a child's spirit. Okay, we won't antagonize them. We won't be saying, I told you so. And, a lot of us grew up hearing, I told you so. And our loved ones meant well. And it doesn't mean that when they said it, it was a tease, right? They're just literally saying, hey, I told you this. Do you remember I told you this? And that's okay. But timing is everything. And if someone is hurting and they come to you, if a young person is coming to you for help, in their moment of need, I told you so is not going to help them. It's going to hurt your relationship with them, because it's going to cause them to put up a wall that they were letting down to allow you in to help them. It's going to cause them to feel that they have to defend their heart, which may have already been broken in another situation. And now they're coming to you with this broken, bleeding heart, and you're telling them, I told you so. And that's like exposing a wound and stepping on it. That's what it equates to. That's not what our words should do. Our words should be here to build. If a young person comes to you and they are coming to you after they've asked your advice and they went and did something else anyway, that was the opposite of what you told them to do. If they come to you at that point and say, hey, I'm in this predicament and what is your advice? First, I suggest that you pray, because you want to make sure that you are giving them words of life, and you want to make sure that you are telling them what they need for their situation. Every situation doesn't apply to every individual, so you want to pray first. But you also want to make sure that when you deliver the message, that you are careful with the words that you deliver. And there may be a message that might be harder to swallow, and ask God to show you when to deliver that message, when they are receptive to it. This is so important. Communication is more important than many people consider it to be. And that is why so many relationships suffer, It's because we don't take the time sometimes to really think about what we say, how we say it, and when we say what we say. Communication is not just a science, it's an art, and it's something that we need to seek guidance from God, as well as from other, people of wisdom to teach us how to communicate. It's not just a matter of knowing what the word means. In other words, it's not just knowing a language. How do you use the language? How do you turn that tool into something that can build up a soul, that can build up a young person who needs guidance, who needs love, who needs affirmation, who may not receive that at home? I remember when I used to substitute teach. So for those of you who don't know, I'm also like a registered nurse. But I used to love to be in the schools. So sometimes I would substitute teach, or I would go and mentor in the schools. I've been doing that since I was like 20, since I was in undergrad. And what I would often see, and it used to hurt my feelings so bad, is when I would see an adult. And this is not to say that adults don't get worn out, because they're human. So I'm not blaming any one person, but what I'm saying is that what used to hurt my feelings was when I would see adults speak harshly to students that may have been more challenging. Harshly enough to where I could tell that the child was hurting, but because of their response, the way that they showed they were hurting was disruptive. The teacher didn't realize that it was actually because the child was hurt by what he or she said. So we have to learn not only that our words matter, but we have to be able to see someone's heart based on how they respond to what we say. Sometimes that backlash is because they're hurting. Even if you have done your very best to communicate, and you may have done it with love, if something in what was said has triggered the remembrance of a past hurt in that young person, that backlash may not really be in response to something you said. It may be a response to how what you said reminded them of someone else, or it may have triggered them to feel like, oh wow, I've messed up again, and I'm exposed, someone can see me, and that might open up a pain again. It might make them aware of this pain again, and so you might get the backlash of it. I encourage you not to be discouraged by that. Continue to pray for that child, whether it's your child or someone else's. We have to remember that no matter what anybody says, it does take a village to support the upbringing of children. And so, even if it's not your child, my encouragement to you is to not be discouraged by that, and don't take it personally. Sometimes it's hard not to when you really care about these kids, but don't take it personally when you know that you are speaking to this child in love. We're not perfect, okay? We're not always going to say things the exact perfect way. But the more that we practice being conscious of our speech, the more that we practice being intentional about showing love in our words, the easier and the more natural it will become. It's not to say that we'll never have to maybe change what we've said and approach the person and say, I'm sorry if I said this the wrong way. What I meant to say was this, and my heart toward you is, and you fill in the blanks, that you love them, that you want the best for them. You know that they are able to rise above whatever it is because God has equipped them with the gifts to do so. And then you go on to restate what you were trying to convey to that young person. The more that we are able to build up these young people, when they face the challenges in life, they will have a history, they will have documentation in their minds of the affirmations, of the love, of the support, of the unconditional love that others have shown them, and those others should be you and I. The more that we are able to support them, that will help them to heal in the areas where they need healing. It's not to say that they may not need to have other support and other means of therapy, but you can do your part. You can do your part to help that young person. You never, ever, ever want to discount or undervalue your influence on a young person's life. You may think that they don't even look up to you or respect you, but you have no idea what your words of affirmation, your words of encouragement, your kindness, the attention you give them, if they make a joke and it's appropriate and you laugh and you're sincere and you say, kid, you're really funny. You never know what that can do for a child. Think about people who grow up and we hear them on the news and they say, there was this one, maybe it was a janitor in the school, and he used to laugh at my jokes, and he helped me to really realize that I had a gift, and now it might be like he's a famous comedian. That's an example, right? But what I'm saying is this, that those examples are real life examples that happen every day. And you don't know how your words might impact and help to change the trajectory of their life. Do not undervalue your ability to build up and affirm the young people who are in your paths. A simple compliment might totally brighten their day. They may have felt like taking their life. Look for the things where you can build them up. Pay attention to where you can build them up. And so once you develop that relationship with them, when you see areas where they need constructive criticism, they'll be more receptive to it. Timing is so important. If you do not know a young person, the first thing you tell them should not be, in most cases, it shouldn't be how they can correct something about their dress. How about you find something about them that you can compliment them on? Maybe it's their personality, or they colored their hair a certain color and it looks really nice on them, or something else. Don't just go straight in for what you noticed when you first saw them if it isn't necessary to do that. I continue to ask you to speak love into yourself, because the more that you love yourself and appreciate yourself, the easier it's going to be to love and appreciate young people. Oftentimes, adults who only find fault, the adults who only find fault with others, including young people, it's because that's how they see themselves. If you can begin to see the beauty that God has placed in you, then you will be able, the same eyes that you are now developing to see the beauty in you are the same eyes that you will begin to develop to see the beauty in the young people. And they are beautiful people. I wish that people could really see how beautiful they really were. They don't stop being beautiful after the age of 5. They grow in beauty. The problem is that a lot of people begin to see them differently and begin speaking word curses over these young people as soon as they make a mistake or as soon as they talk back. And they begin to, at least in the eyes of those who look at them, the eyes that look at them begin to see them as marred and broken and to be thrown away or to be discarded in the words that we speak of them. The way that we speak about young people, it's like we're throwing them out. And when young people hear this, it breaks their heart. And the way that they express their pain, that language, you see as further rebellion. You see it as them saying foul words or running off and not coming home or, doing things that hurt themselves. But oftentimes it's because they are hurting. They are hurting because of how they feel that they're seen and how they see themselves. I want to end with this. By you speaking life into these young people, you are helping them. Many of them are locked away in a castle of self-hatred. And all that they are hearing in that castle in their mind are things that are harmful, and that would lead to death. Okay? That would lead to their own demise. And you might be that hand that is able to reach into the window and tell them, hey, there's a way out of here. You are special. You are unique. You're as special as you were when you were 5 years old, before you went through whatever you went through, before you did whatever you did. And I want to show you how to get out of here. This is why we need to continue speaking life over our young people, and praying for them and believing in them. God believes in them. Excuse me. God believes in them. We should believe in them too. God knew everything that they would go through before they even were born. And the same way you love and doted over that child, or the same way that their parents may have, if they were blessed to have that situation, the same way that their parents loved them is the way that they ought to continue loving them, to help rescue them from the mindset of self-harm and death, and to help free them to see that there is a possibility, and not only a possibility, there is an expected end that God has for them. It's a plan, a map that He already has to their destiny, and that destiny is one of fulfillment and joy. Let's help them get there. Let's not throw them away. They are precious jewels, every one of them. Every one of them are precious jewels. The ones who struggle with their identities, the ones who may be violent, the ones who self-harm, the ones who have addictions, the ones who are lost, and the ones who seem to have it all together. They too, all of them, they need for us to speak into them, because we don't know what they're really thinking. And we'll only know that through effective communication, prayer first of all, then effective communication, love, persistence, not quitting on them, and speaking life into them. We can do it. We have to do it. They depend on us. Love and blessings to y'all. Make the most of every moment.